My son's wife, Vanessa, a woman who curated her life for an online audience of strangers, put me in a nursing home to get her hands on my pension. She did it with a smile, a flood of crocodile tears, and a series of beautifully filtered social media posts about the heartbreaking but necessary decision to get her beloved mother-in-law the professional care she deserved. She told the world I was losing my mind. She only started to lose her own when she began to hear my voice whispering her name in the middle of the night in the silent, empty master bedroom of the house she was redecorating with my money. Hi everyone, I'm Grandma Alice. My name is Alice Gable. I am 78 years old, and for 30 years, my voice was my life. I was a radio host. I had a late-night jazz and talk show called Midnight Blue. People would tune in to hear my voice, a voice that critics once described as being like dark honey, with a shot of whiskey in it. It was a voice that soothed, that seduced, that told stories in the quiet, lonely hours of the night. This is a story about how that voice, after it was silenced and locked away, learned to whisper again, across miles of distance, into the ear of the one person who least wanted to hear it. This is a story about the lies we tell ourselves, and the lies we tell the world, and the quiet, persistent, terrible truth that sometimes refuses to be silenced. It's a secret I have held, a ghostly broadcast that only one person could hear. Before I turn on the microphone for this final broadcast, I ask for your support. Please, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your presence, your active listening, gives my voice a home again. It reminds me that I am more than just a name on a pension check. To understand Vanessa's particular brand of cruelty, you must first understand her religion. And her religion was social media. Her God was an algorithm she did not understand, and her prayers were a constant stream of hashtags and carefully staged photographs. She was an influencer, a term that, to my generation, means very little, but to hers meant everything. Her life was not a thing to be lived, but a thing to be performed. Every meal, every vacation, every new dress was a piece of content, a carefully crafted scene in the ongoing reality show of her own fabulousness. She was beautiful, she was stylish, and she was a brilliant actress. Her greatest role was that of the perfect wife to my son, Mark, and the perfect caring daughter-in-law to me. My son, Mark, is a good man, a kind man, but he is a simple man, a man who sees the world in black and white. And he is utterly, completely, and hopelessly in love with his beautiful, complicated wife. He sees her online persona, her thousands of followers, her carefully curated glamour, not as a performance, but as a reflection of her inner worth. He is her biggest fan, her most devoted follower. And he believes everything she tells him. My own life, before Vanessa decided to rewrite the script, was a quiet and contented one. After my husband, Frank, passed away, and after my radio show was finally taken off the air, in favor of some syndicated soulless pop music countdown, I retired. I lived in a small, comfortable apartment filled with books and music. My voice, once a public commodity, became a private pleasure. I would read stories aloud to myself, just to feel the familiar rumble in my own chest. I was not wealthy, but I was comfortable. Frank had been a prudent man, an accountant, and he had left me with a solid pension, a series of investments that provided me with a steady, comfortable income. It was more than enough for my simple needs. It was my security, my independence, and, as it turned out, it was my curse. Vanessa's obsession with my finances began as a series of casual, probing questions, always disguised as loving concern. Alice, you must let me help you with your bills. It's all so complicated these days, with online banking and all that. We worry about you, Alice. Are you sure you're eating properly? You must let us give you some money for groceries. I would politely, but firmly, refuse. Thank you, my dear, but I am perfectly fine. My pension is more than adequate. The word pension always made her eyes light up with a particular, acquisitive gleam. She could see my quiet, comfortable independence not as a blessing, but as a wasted resource. In her world, money was not for security. It was for displaying. It was for new countertops, for designer handbags, for trips to Bali that could be turned into a week's worth of content. My quiet, un-Instagrammable life was, to her, a form of hoarding. The plan to have me declared incompetent was a masterpiece of subtle, insidious gaslighting. It began with small things. She would move my keys from the hook by the door to a drawer in the kitchen. Then, when I couldn't find them, she would look at Mark with a sad, worried expression and whisper, "Her memory is getting so bad." She would ask me to remember a long, complicated story from Mark's childhood. And when I would inevitably get a detail wrong, she would sigh and pat my hand. "It's okay, Alice. We all get a little forgetful in our old age." She started to document my decline for her online audience. She would post a beautifully filtered, black and white photo of my hand, my arthritic fingers resting on a book, with a long, poignant caption. "A quiet moment with my beloved mother-in-law. D. It is so hard to watch the strongest people we know become frail. Eldercare." Cherish every moment. The post would get hundreds of likes, dozens of comments praising her for her compassion, her kindness. She was monetizing my aging process, turning my quiet, normal decline into a compelling narrative of her own sainthood. The turning point, the event she used as the cornerstone of her case against my sanity, was a simple, common, and utterly human moment of forgetfulness. I had put a pot of water on the stove to boil for my tea, and I had gotten distracted by a phone call. I forgot about it. The water boiled away, and the pot began to scorch. The smoke alarm went off, a shrill, piercing shriek. It was a stupid mistake, a mistake anyone of any age could make. But, in Vanessa's hands, it became a 4-alarm fire of senility. She didn't just tell Mark about it. She performed it. She called him at work, her voice a torrent of panicked, breathless sobs. "Mark, you have to come home. It's Mom." She almost burned the house down. She left the stove on. She didn't even know. What if we had been out? What if she had been hurt? By the time Mark got home, Vanessa had transformed the minor incident into a near-death experience. She had also, I later discovered, taken a dramatic, artfully blurry photo of the scorched pot and posted it online with a caption that read, "Terrifying reminder of how fragile life is. We are so lucky everyone is safe. It may be time to have a difficult conversation about what is best for Mom. My heart is breaking. Family first. Difficult decisions." The difficult conversation happened that evening. It was not a conversation. It was a sentencing. "Mom," Mark began, his face a mask of pained, earnest concern. Vanessa sat beside him, holding his hand, dabbing at her dry, beautiful eyes with a tissue. "Vanessa and we've been talking, and we are so worried about you. You're not safe here anymore. You need more help than we can provide." "What are you talking about, Mark?" I asked, my voice calm. "I made a mistake. I burned a pot. It won't happen again." "But it will, Mom," Vanessa said, her voice a soft, honeyed poison. "The doctor said that with your condition, these things will only get worse. The memory loss, the confusion." "What condition?" I demanded. "I have no condition." "The early onset dementia, Alice," she said, the lie sliding from her lips with a practiced, sorrowful ease. "The doctor we saw last month. Don't you remember?" I stared at her. We had not seen a doctor. There was no diagnosis. It was a pure, audacious, breathtaking fabrication. I looked at my son. I looked for a flicker of doubt, a sign of his own memory, his own reason. I saw only the reflection of his wife's beautiful, lying face. He believed her. He believed the story she had woven, the narrative she had so carefully constructed. "We have found a wonderful place for you, Mom," Mark continued, his voice thick with a genuine, if utterly misplaced emotion. "It's called The Willows. It's more like a resort than a nursing home. It has beautiful gardens, activities, and a wonderful professional staff. They can give you the 24-hour care you need. Edit. And to pay for it, Vanessa added, her voice a model of practical, loving concern. We will, of course, need to take over the management of your finances, your pension, your investments. It's all so complicated. You shouldn't have to worry about it anymore. We will handle everything. And there it was. The quiet, elegant, and utterly brutal checkmate. They were not just taking my freedom. They were taking my voice, my independence, my name. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not protest. What was the point? My son, my own son, was looking at me and seeing not his mother, but a senile, incompetent, and dangerous old woman. He was seeing the character his wife had created, and he was acting accordingly. A week later, I was living at the Willows. It was, as they had promised, a beautiful place. The lawns were manicured. The staff was polite. The food was bland and served on a precise schedule. It was a gilded cage, a comfortable, quiet, and soul-destroying prison. My life was reduced to a series of meaningless, scheduled activities. Bingo at 10:30. A supervised walk in the garden at 2. Dinner at 5:30. My voice, my beautiful, dark, honey and whiskey voice, had no place here. It was a place of quiet, polite, and orderly decay. Vanessa and Mark came to visit me once a week, on Sundays. They would bring me flowers and sit with me for an hour, their faces a perfect performance of dutiful, loving concern. Vanessa would take a selfie with me, her cheek pressed against my hair, her smile bright and false. The caption would read, "Sunday visits with my sweet Alice. She is so happy and safe in her new home. My heart is at peace. Blessed nursing home alive." Meanwhile, I was watching, from the remove of my gilded cage, as she began to spend my money. She started a massive renovation of their house. A new kitchen, with marble countertops. A new master bathroom, with a jacuzzi tub. She posted photos of it all, of course. Our dream kitchen is finally coming together. So excited to create new family memories here. Home renovation, dream kitchen. She bought a new car. A sleek, white SUV. New baby! So in love. New car blessed. She bought new clothes, new jewelry, a new, ridiculously expensive handbag. Each new purchase was a new post, a new performance of a life of effortless, fabulous wealth. A life funded by my pension. A life built on the lie of my own incompetence. I would sit in my quiet room at the Willows, scrolling through her feed on the small tablet my son had given me. I would look at the pictures of her beautiful, happy life, a life she had stolen from me. And I would feel a rage so cold, so deep, so profound, it felt like it could freeze the sun. She had taken my life. She had taken my money. She had taken my son. And she had taken my voice. It was in the dead of night, in the crushing, institutional silence of my room at the Willows, that my voice decided to come back. It did not come back to me. It had no use for me anymore. I was locked away, silenced, a ghost in a machine of managed care. No, my voice decided to go on a visit. It decided to travel, a silent, invisible whisper, across the miles of dark, sleeping city. It decided to go home, to my son's house, to the beautiful new master bedroom that my money had paid for. And it decided to speak to the one person who deserved, more than anyone else in the world, to hear it. I did not send it. I did not command it. I simply let it go. I lay in my bed, and I thought about her. Vanessa. I thought about her name. I thought about her sleeping in her new, expensive bed, her conscience clear, her victory absolute. And I whispered her name into the darkness of my own small room. Vanessa. Just once. A single, soft, honey and whiskey whisper. And then I fell asleep. And I dreamed of the sound of my own voice, traveling through the night, a ghost on the airwaves, looking for a place to land. My life at the Willows settled into a rhythm of profound and soul-crushing boredom. It was a life dictated by bells and schedules, a life scrubbed clean of all spontaneity, of all individuality. I was no longer a person. I was a resident, a body to be medicated, fed, and washed on a timetable designed for maximum efficiency. My son, Mark, and my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, continued their weekly Sunday performances of filial piety. They would arrive with flowers or a box of flavorless sugar-free biscuits, and they would sit with me for precisely 1 hour, their conversation a masterpiece of cheerful, empty platitudes. "You're looking so well today, Alice," Vanessa would chirp, while simultaneously taking a mirror selfie with me in the background, my face a placid, sad blur behind her perfectly made-up one. She would post it almost immediately, soaking up precious moments with this beautiful soul, feeling so grateful for the amazing care she's getting here. Andrea V. I was a prop in the stage play of her life, a convenient, silent symbol of her own compassion and generosity. They would tell me about the ongoing renovation of their house, a project funded entirely by the liquidation of my own life savings. Vanessa would show me pictures on her phone of the new Italian marble countertops, the German-engineered appliances, the custom-built walk-in closet in their master bedroom. "Isn't it going to be magnificent, Alice?" she would gush. A real sanctuary, a place for us to finally relax and be at peace. I would look at the pictures of my money being transformed into her sanctuary, and I would nod, and I would smile a small, vague, nursing home smile. But on the inside, the cold, hard diamond of my rage was being compressed, polished, and sharpened. I had whispered her name into the darkness of my small, sterile room. I had sent my curse out into the world, and now I was waiting. I was a patient, quiet spider, sitting in the center of a web I did not yet know I had spun. I was listening. The first thread of that web was tugged a week later in the heart of her new sanctuary. Vanessa's new master bedroom was her masterpiece. It was a vast, white space with a wall of glass that looked out onto the city lights. The furniture was minimal, expensive, and uncomfortable. The centerpiece was a king-sized bed with a cloud-like white duvet and a mountain of decorative pillows that were removed every night and replaced every morning. It was a room designed not for sleeping, but for being photographed. It was a Tuesday night. Mark was away on a business trip. The house was silent. Vanessa had just completed her elaborate, multi-step skincare routine. She slipped between the high thread count sheets of her new bed, a feeling of deep, smug satisfaction washing over her. She had done it. She had built her perfect life. Her house was a palace. Her husband was successful. And her inconvenient, money-draining mother-in-law was safely tucked away, a problem solved, her pension check now flowing directly and seamlessly into Vanessa's own accounts. She picked up her phone to post one last, perfect, serene picture of her bare feet against the white duvet, ending the day with a grateful heart. #self-care. #dream life. #peace. She posted the picture, put her phone on the nightstand, and switched off the light. She sighed, a soft, contented sound in the perfect, expensive silence. And it was in that perfect silence that she heard it. A sound so soft, so faint, it was more a feeling than a sound. It was like the rustle of a silk dress in an empty room, or the sigh of the wind through a keyhole. It was a whisper, and the whisper formed a single word. Her name. Vanessa. Her eyes snapped open in the darkness. She lay perfectly still, her heart giving a small, sharp jolt. What was that? She strained her ears, listening. There was nothing, only the faint, distant hum of the city. House is settling, she told herself, a familiar, rational explanation. It's a new renovation. The materials are still expanding and contracting. Ranarm. She closed her eyes, a flicker of annoyance passing through her. She hated unexplained noises. They were messy. uncontrolled. She was just drifting off to sleep when she heard it again. This time, it was a little clearer, a little closer. It seemed to come from the corner of the room, near the large window. Vanessa. It was a voice. A woman's voice. A soft, low, intimate whisper. She sat bolt upright in bed, her heart now hammering against her ribs. She fumbled for the lamp on her nightstand, her hand shaking. The light flooded the room, chasing the shadows into the corners. The room was empty. Of course, it was empty. The window was closed. The door was locked. She was alone. She got out of bed and walked through the entire upstairs of the house, her bare feet silent on the expensive hardwood floors. She checked the locks on the doors, the latches on the windows. Everything was secure. Everything was as it should be. I'm just tired, she thought, her mind a whirlwind of self-reassurance. The stress of the renovation. The exhaustion of performing my perfect life every single day. I'm just hearing things. I need more sleep. She went back to bed, leaving a single dim light on in the hallway. She pulled the covers up to her chin, but she did not sleep. She lay there for hours, her ears straining, listening to the silence, a new, unwelcome guest of anxiety, now sharing her bed. The voice did not come back that night. The next night, it did. It came at the same time, in the same way. She had just turned off the light, her body tense with anticipation. And in the silence it came. Vanessa. This time she recognized the voice. The realization was a slow, dawning, and deeply unsettling horror. The voice, the whisper that was now as clear as if it were spoken right next to her ear, was not the voice of a stranger. It was not the wind. It was the voice of her mother-in-law. It was Alice's voice. But it was not my current voice, the one that was weak and sometimes trembled with age. No, it was the voice from my old radio show. The voice she had heard on the dusty old recordings I kept. The voice she had secretly despised for its confidence, its warmth, its power. The dark, honey, and whiskey voice. My voice. My ghost. She let out a small, strangled cry and pulled the pillow over her head as if she could smother the sound. But the sound wasn't in the room. It was in her head. A private broadcast for an audience of one. The whispers became her nightly torment. They were patient, relentless, and utterly inescapable. They were a quiet, constant drip of poison in the well of her sanity. She began to change. The sleek, confident, ever-smiling woman I saw on my tablet screen was not the woman who lived in that house. The real Vanessa became a creature of frayed nerves and barely suppressed panic. Dark circles appeared under her eyes, which she would carefully cover with expensive concealer before taking her morning selfie. She lost her appetite. She, a woman who photographed every meal, now just picked at her food, her ears constantly straining for a sound no one else could hear. She tried to fight back with logic and technology. She downloaded a white noise app on her phone and would play the sound of falling rain all night long. But the whisper would just weave itself into the sound of the rain. A soft, intimate voice calling her name from within the storm. She bought an expensive air purifier, thinking the sound might be a strange oral hallucination caused by a lack of air circulation. The purifier hummed, and the whisper hummed right along with it. Her life became a frantic, desperate search for an explanation that made sense. A search that was doomed to fail, because the phenomenon was not logical. It was personal. She finally broke her silence with Mark about a month into the haunting. She had tried to hide her growing terror from him, but her frayed nerves and sleepless nights were becoming impossible to conceal. "Mark," she said one evening, her voice a little too casual, Do you ever hear things in this house at night?" He looked up from his laptop, a distracted, tired look on his face. "Hear things like what? The ice maker?" "No," she said, her hands twisting in her lap. "Like a voice, a whisper." He frowned. "A whisper? No, don't be silly. This house is built like a bank vault. You can't hear a thing." "But I do," she insisted, her voice rising with a note of hysteria. Every night, in our bedroom, I hear a voice. It's whispering my name. He put down his laptop and gave her his full attention for the first time in weeks. He looked at her pale face, at the dark circles under her eyes, at the frantic, fearful energy radiating from her. And he saw not a woman being haunted, but a woman on the verge of a breakdown. "Honey," he said, his voice soft with a clinical concern. "That's not possible. There's no one in the house but us and my mother." He gestured vaguely towards my end of the house. "And she certainly isn't whispering anything. You've been under a lot of stress with the renovation. Maybe you should talk to someone. A doctor." The suggestion that she was the one with the problem, that this was a figment of her own stressed, female imagination, sent her into a rage. "I am not crazy, Mark," she shrieked. "I am hearing it. It's your mother. I know it is. It's her voice." Mark stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning alarm. "My mother? Vanessa, that is insane. My mother is miles away in a nursing home. She can barely speak on the phone. How in God's name could she be whispering in our bedroom? You're not making any sense. You need help." Oh. His rational, loving dismissal was the cruelest blow of all. It was exactly what she had done to me. She had created a narrative of my incompetence, and he had believed her. Now, she was telling him the truth of her own terrifying experience, and he was dismissing her as hysterical, as crazy. She was trapped. She could not prove the existence of the whisper, and her frantic attempts to do so only made her seem more unhinged. She was completely, utterly, and beautifully alone with her haunting. The haunting, sensing her isolation, her growing terror, began to evolve. It was no longer content to just whisper her name. It began to comment. The whispers remained soft, intimate, and for her ears only. But now, they had an edge of quiet conversational malice. They were the whispers of a ghost who was an avid follower of her social media feed. She would be in her new, enormous walk-in closet, admiring a new pair of shoes she had bought with my pension money. She would post a picture of them. "A little retail therapy to lift the spirits. #schulover #blessed." And in the quiet of the closet, she would hear it. A soft, honey and whiskey whisper, right by her ear. "Lovely. Did my pension pay for those, dear?" She would drop the shoe and spin around, her heart seizing, her face white with terror. The closet was empty. She would be in her new, spa-like bathroom, applying a new, expensive anti-aging serum. She would be filming a short video for her followers, talking about the importance of self-care. And as she was speaking, the whisper would cut through her own voice, a sound only she could hear. A new face, to hide the old soul Vanessa. She would ruin the take, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes darting around the empty, white room. The whispers became her constant, invisible critic. They were a running commentary on the life she had stolen. Every new purchase, every new post, every moment of her performative happiness was now tainted by the quiet, ghostly voice of the woman whose life was funding it all. Her perfect world, her curated reality, was being systematically dismantled by a whisper. Her home was no longer a sanctuary, it was a torture chamber. She started spending less and less time there, preferring the noisy anonymity of cafes and shopping malls. But sometimes, even there, in the quiet of a dressing room or a silent elevator, she would hear it. A soft, distant, impossible whisper of her own name. Vanessa. She was a woman being erased, not by being locked away, but by being followed, by being known, by being seen in her most private moments, by a ghost whose eyes she could not see, but whose voice she could not escape. The final public shattering was, in retrospect, inevitable. It happened during an Instagram live session. This was to be a triumphant event for her. A tour for her thousands of followers. A grand unveiling of the final, completed renovation. A final, definitive statement of her own perfect taste, her own perfect life. She had spent all day preparing. The house was spotless. The flowers were fresh. The lighting was perfect. She was dressed in a beautiful flowing white dress, her hair and makeup impeccable. She was the picture of serene, aspirational success. She started the live feed, her smile bright, her voice a warm, welcoming purr. "Hi everyone! Welcome to my home. So many of you have been asking for a full tour of the renovation, so I thought I'd finally show you around." She walked through the house, her phone held out in front of her, narrating every detail with practiced enthusiasm. The Italian marble, countertops dead wine, the custom-made cabinetry, the designer light fixtures. Thousands of people were watching, their comments flooding the screen with heart emojis and praise. Gong, house goals. You have the most beautiful taste. You are living the dream, Vanessa? She was basking in the adoration. She was at the absolute zenith of her performance. She saved the master bedroom for last. The grand finale. "And this," she said, her voice dropping to a dramatic, intimate hush as she pushed the door open, "is my sanctuary, my favorite room in the house, my peaceful oasis." She panned the camera around the vast white room, showing off the expensive bed, the minimalist furniture, the breathtaking view from the wall of glass. She ended the pan, turning the camera back to her own smiling, perfect face. "It is, truly," she said, "the most peaceful, quiet place on—" She stopped. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened, losing their focus on the camera. They were looking at something just beyond it. Something in the room. Something no one else could see. Her followers saw her face change. They saw the color drain from it. They saw the perfect smile crumble into a mask of pure, abject terror. And then she screamed. It was not a ladylike scream. It was a raw, guttural, animal sound of a soul in its final agony. "No!" she shrieked, her eyes fixed on an empty corner of the room. "Leave me alone. Get out of my head." The thousands of people watching saw a beautiful woman in a beautiful room, screaming at nothing. They saw her drop her phone, the screen shattering as it hit the floor, the live feed ending in a chaotic, dizzying swirl of white carpet and white walls. In my small, quiet beige room at the Willows, miles away, I watched the whole thing on my tablet. I watched as the comments on her last post exploded into a frenzy of confusion, of concern, of mockery. And as I watched my daughter-in-law's perfect, curated world come crashing down in a public spectacle of madness, I took a slow, deep, satisfying breath. My work, it seemed, was almost done. The ghost had finally, truly, made herself heard. The aftermath of Vanessa's public, unraveling on Instagram Live, was a digital wildfire. Within hours, the clip of her screaming at an empty room had gone viral. It was clipped, remixed, and turned into a cruel meme. The comment sections of her perfect curated posts became a dumpster fire of mockery, pity, and vicious speculation. Her carefully constructed brand, the entire edifice of her online identity, had been demolished in a single 30-second clip of raw, unfiltered madness. The sponsors, the brands who had paid her to perform her life of effortless glamour, dropped her immediately. Her contracts were terminated. Her thousands of adoring followers began to desert her, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. The digital world, which had been her kingdom, had turned on her with a swift and brutal finality. She was no longer an influencer. She was a cautionary tale. A joke. Mark, my son, was forced to pick up the pieces of his shattered wife. He brought her home from a friend's house, where she had fled after the disastrous livestream. She was a ghost of her former self, a trembling, weeping creature wrapped in a cashmere blanket, her eyes wide with a terror he could not comprehend. He did what any logical, loving, and completely oblivious man would do. He assumed she had had a nervous breakdown. The pressure of the renovation, the stress of maintaining her online persona, the added burden of my presence in their lives, it had all become too much for her fragile psyche. He saw her not as a person being haunted, but as a machine that had finally, spectacularly, malfunctioned. He became her reluctant caregiver. He made an appointment for her with the best, most expensive psychiatrist in the city. He doled out the tranquilizers she was prescribed. He spoke to her in a soft, gentle, placating voice, the same voice one uses with a frightened animal or a delusional patient. "It's okay, honey," he would say, stroking her hair. It was just a panic attack. There was no one in the room. There was no voice. It was all in your head. His rational, loving reassurances were, for her, the most terrifying thing of all. He was denying her reality. He was gaslighting her, just as she had gaslit me about my own memory. She was trapped in a prison of her own making, a prison where the walls were her own crumbling sanity, and her husband was the gentle, well-meaning jailer who refused to believe in the ghost that was her constant companion. The whispering, of course, did not stop. If anything, it grew more intimate, more personal, more cruel. It no longer just commented on her possessions. It began to comment on her state of mind. She would be lying in bed, her body trembling with anxiety, and the soft, honey and whiskey voice would whisper from the pillow beside her. "Are you feeling a little useless, Vanessa? A little invisible? Insincere?" And she would be looking at her own pale, haunted face in the mirror, and the whisper would drift from the glass. "They think you're the crazy one, dear. Isn't that a delicious irony?" I, in my quiet room at the Willows, was a silent, distant god, pulling the strings of her unraveling mind. I felt a grim, terrible satisfaction. She had tried to declare me mad for her own financial gain. And now, the entire world believed that she, the beautiful, successful, perfect Vanessa, was the one who had lost her mind. The punishment was so perfectly, so poetically just. The final turning point, the moment of confrontation, was not of my making, but of hers. After 2 weeks of living in a medicated fog, of being a prisoner in her own haunted house, she finally found a single desperate shred of clarity. She realized that the doctors, the pills, the rational explanations, none of it would work. Because the problem was not in her mind. The problem was in a quiet, beige room at the Willows senior residence. The ghost had a source, and she had to go to it. She came to me on a Sunday. It was their usual visiting day, but this time, she came alone. Mark, she explained later, thought she was at a yoga class. She appeared at the door of my room, and for a moment, I did not recognize her. The glamorous, confident woman was gone. In her place was a thin, haggard creature, her face pale and devoid of makeup, her expensive clothes hanging off her like a costume. Her eyes were the most shocking part. They were no longer the bright, assessing eyes of a predator. They were the wide, hollow, haunted eyes of the prey. She walked into my room and closed the door behind her. She did not speak. She just stood there, staring at me, her body trembling slightly. I looked up at her from my armchair, my face a placid mask. I waited. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was a raw, broken whisper, a mere shadow of its former confident purr. "Please," she said. "Please, make it stop." I continued to look at her, my expression unchanging. "I don't know what you're talking about, my dear," I said, my voice soft and frail. "Don't," she sobbed, a single desperate tear tracing a path down her pale cheek. "Please, don't pretend anymore. The voice, your voice, in my room, in my head. I hear it all the time. It's you. I know it's you." She sank to her knees in front of my chair, a gesture of absolute, unconditional surrender. She, the proud, beautiful Vanessa, was kneeling at the feet of the woman she had called a ghost. "How?" she whispered, her eyes searching mine for an answer, for a reason, for a logic that did not exist. "How are you doing it?" I looked down at this broken woman, at the ruins of the life she had built on a foundation of lies and my own money. And I felt the last vestiges of my rage, my cold, hard desire for revenge, finally, completely dissolve. All that was left was a vast, aching sadness. The game was over. I had won. but it was a victory that brought me no joy. "I am not doing anything, Vanessa," I said, and my voice was filled with a quiet, simple truth. "I am just sitting here, in this room, living the life you chose for me. But you took my voice. You took my life. You took my pension. And you thought that would be the end of it. You thought a person, a soul, could be so easily erased. But a voice is a stubborn thing, especially a voice that has been silenced. It wants to be heard. It will find a way to be heard. You are not being haunted by me, my dear. You are being haunted by the truth." Nay. She just knelt there, weeping, her body racked with the sobs of a person who has finally been forced to look at the full, ugly reality of her own soul. "What do you want?" she finally choked out. "What do I have to do to make it stop?" I looked at her, at this thief who had stolen my life and was now begging me to take it back. And I knew what I wanted. It was not just the money. It was my independence. It was my name. It was my voice. "I want you to undo it," I said, my own voice clear and strong, the old honey and whiskey resonance returning to it for the first time in years. "All of it. You will sell the house. You will sell the car. You will sell the jewelry. You will sell every last thing that you bought with my money. And you will put every single penny back into a new trust in my name, and my name alone. You will give me back my life. And then, perhaps, the ghosts will be quiet." Men. The process of restitution was a slow, humiliating, and, for me, deeply satisfying one. Vanessa, in a desperate, frantic bid to reclaim her own sanity, did exactly as I had commanded. Her beautiful, renovated house, her sanctuary, was put on the market. The sale was a fire sale. The price dropped for a quick closing. The white SUV was repossessed. The designer clothes and handbags were sold to consignment shops for a fraction of their original price. The diamond bracelet, the expensive watches, they were all liquidated. She had to explain it all to Mark, of course. The truth, or at least a version of it, finally came out. Not the supernatural part. He would never have believed that. But the financial part. The stolen pension. The life of luxury built on the lie of my incompetence. The revelation shattered what was left of their marriage. Mark, the good, kind, simple man, was forced to confront the fact that his beautiful, perfect wife was a thief and a liar, and that he, in his willful blindness, had been her accomplice. He was a man who had stood by and watched as his own mother was systematically stripped of her dignity and her savings. The guilt was a poison that destroyed what was left of their love. They separated. He moved into a small, sad bachelor apartment, a man adrift, his life in ruins. And Vanessa? She moved into a small rental, her life of curated glamour gone, replaced by the grim reality of her own consequences. With the help of a lawyer, a new trust was established in my name. And week by week, I watched, from my room at the Willows, as the money flowed back in. Every deposit, every transfer, was a small victory, a piece of my stolen life being returned to me. The day the final transfer was made, the day my account was made whole again, was a quiet, uneventful day. There was no thunder or lightning, no grand finale. But that night, for the first time in months, Vanessa slept in a silent room. The whispers were gone. The curse, its purpose served, had lifted. The debt was paid. The books were balanced. With my independence and my resources restored, I checked myself out of the Willows. I found a lovely, small apartment in a building with a real garden, not just a manicured lawn. I bought myself a new, comfortable armchair. I filled my shelves with books. I started to live again. My relationship with my son is a work in progress. He visits me, his face full of a deep, sorrowful shame. He is trying to atone. He is trying to be the son he should have been all along. I do not know if he will ever succeed, but I am willing to let him try. I never saw Vanessa again. I do not know what became of her. Her social media accounts were deleted. She, A woman who had built her entire identity on being seen had finally, truly disappeared. I sometimes wonder if she ever found peace, or if the silence she now lives in is more terrifying than the whispers ever were. I learned a valuable lesson from all of this. A person's life, their worth, is not in the things they own or the image they project. It is in their voice, their truth, their spirit. And when you try to silence that spirit, when you try to lock it away and steal its power, you are playing a very dangerous game. Because a voice, a spirit, a soul, it will not be silenced forever. It will find a way to speak. And if you are the one who has wronged it, it will find you. And it will whisper your name in the dark until you have no choice but to listen. Thank you for listening to my story. It is a reminder that the simplest things, a plate of warm food, a shared meal, a moment of dignity, are the most important things of all. Please show your support for this channel by liking this video, subscribing, and clicking that notification bell. In the comments below, I invite you to share a story of a meal that you remember with love. A meal that was more than just food. A meal that was a memory. Let's fill this space with our own nourishing stories. Love you all. This is Grandma Catherine, and I'll see you in the next story.